ENK says, "Hey, Zach, Cam Newton recently had an interview on his time in the NFL last year. Did you watch or listen to it? And if so, what were your thoughts?" In my opinion, Cam came off as someone who's living in denial about where his body is at this point in his career. He's making a lot of excuses and not taking responsibility for his poor play. But I was curious what you think. You didn't actually, ENK, say what interview you were referring to. I assumed you meant the hour-long interview he did with the Pivot podcast that is hosted by Fred Taylor, Ryan Clark, and Channing Crowder. It's the most recent big interview he did. He's done a couple other ones this offseason. I got to say first, before I jump into Cam Newton, this was a very well-conducted interview. A lot of respect to the guys at Pivot. They're doing justice to the people they interview and giving not only interesting stories and good insight, but they're also making people look good. And I think that's cool when you can tell someone's story, not ruin their life, and talk about hard stuff and challenge them. That's incredible. And I love that they kindly challenged Cam Newton. It was good to challenge him, but I'm glad they were respectful. And hey, the Pivot podcast, well done to those guys. I think Pivot, by the way, is a reference to how guys pivot or transition into whatever's next after sports. It's not always the case. Like they had Mike Tomlin on the other day. Not really sure what his pivot moment is, but it's a great platform for guys to come on and reflect and share lessons they've learned. And I think the guys doing it, Channing Crowder, Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, they are, I had to make sure I got Channing Crowder's last name right. They're former athletes. And so if you're a former athlete, that's who I would want to talk to. People who have been in your shoes and understand it. And Pivot, great show. Ryan Clark, by the way, he's a star. I love that guy. I think a former Pittsburgh Steeler. Ryan Clark is a man. I am a huge fan of him. Let's talk about Cam Newton before we get into the interview, though. He's hitting a cigar the entire time during this interview. And he sounds like a retired guy who's made his money and is done. He's like, He's got a great line early on. He says, "No matter what you call me, you can't call me broke." And by the way, I feel like I need to say this early on. So I don't want people to think I hate Cam Newton because I do not at all. Cam's prime years were a beautiful moment in the history of football. From his Auburn national title to, there's a video of Cam Newton. It's posted, I watched it this morning 11 years ago. I rewatched it. Cam Newton highlights from the 2010-11 season. If you go to YouTube and you type in Cam Newton, all the above, you'll find it. It's iconic. And Auburn, his college career, winning the NFL MVP in 2015, going to a Super Bowl. The Cam show was so much fun. And him as a quarterback, who he is as a person, really meant a lot to the people I grew up with. And I love Cam, dude. I don't know. We'll talk more about it, but I want to start there, that I love Cam. I get the sense that Cam is trying really hard to be a good dude, and he wants to learn from the experiences he's had. And I also think when it comes to Cam Newton, it's a bit frustrating that the media in general will always skew negative. A negative story about a star person is always going to get more views than a story about some guy donating to charity or something. But in the history of Cam Newton, his negative moments have gone super viral. And you don't see enough about all the great stuff he does in his community, or like he talked about his 7-on-7 stuff he does and the quarterbacks he's trained. And you just don't see that stuff go viral. That's literally something Cam said. And he's totally right. I support him there. Like, it is frustrating. We pick and choose, and often the stuff we choose is the negative about Cam. You never seem to see enough about the good stuff he does. Now, here is the main focus of the first half of the interview. Cam says many, many times, there are not 32 guys better than me. And what that means is he's basically saying, I should be a starting NFL quarterback. And his focus is on who is the bottom, worst, 32 out of 32 quarterback. Who's the bottom 32? Worst NFL starter. Who are the bottom 5 NFL quarterbacks? And my first thought was like, well, okay, probably the Giants with Daniel Jones, Miami with Tua. I love Tua. I love him as a person. I hope he does well. But right now, he's got a lot to prove. Probably Seattle with Drew Lock. Those are like the worst 3 quarterbacks I can think of off the top of my head. Those are places Cam could go play. Does Cam want to be a Tyrod Taylor or Josh Johnson or Chase Daniel level role? I don't know. I would love to see Cam in New Orleans with Michael Thomas and Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara, a good offensive line, a good defense. That would be fun. I think Jameis is the guy right now, but if Jameis gets hurt or plays badly, I want to see Cam there ready and waiting to play. Although I will also say, I think if Cam Newton had a lot of good football left, we would have seen it. I very much respect Bill Belichick, the Patriots head coach, and he is a thrifty dude, man. He loves finding players that other people don't value and getting the most out of them and turning them into star players. Wes Welker left Miami, went to New England, star. He got the best years of Randy Moss at the end of his career. When people thought Randy Moss was washed up, he went to New England, was outstanding. Bill Belichick tried with Cam and couldn't find anything really worth keeping and moved on to Mac Jones. So, I don't know, man. Is there really much left good that Cam can do as an NFL starter? I don't know. The pivot guys really challenged him. They said, the bottom 5 guys in the NFL are 10 years younger than you, Cam. They're younger and they're trying to prove themselves. And the market didn't believe that Cam was in the top 32. The NFL told us that is what they said. Like, if you were a top 32 quarterback, you'd probably be in the league. I don't know if that's entirely true. I think he might be better than some of the guys in the bottom 5. But also his future is limited. Cam Newton is 33 years old at the end of his career. Would you rather have him or 24-year-old Tua, who might get better as time goes on? Tua isn't great now, but he could get better, where Cam, 10 years from now, isn't going to be playing. Tua could be still playing in 10 years. And, he said New England was a messed up situation, Cam did, because he said, I was still learning the system 6 to 8 weeks in, and it was brain overload. And I knew the playbook, but not well enough where I was still thinking about things pre-snap. I wasn't reacting, I was thinking. And I don't know that I'd actually admit that. Okay, I didn't know the playbook very well. I'm like, is that great to say? I don't know. He said Carolina was messed up. They signed me on Thursday. I played on Sunday. 10 days later, I was a starting quarterback. And then Cam also said I need a good supporting cast, which makes sense. And he said something I love. He said the stats don't properly show how good I am. It made me want to do a Cam Newton film analysis. I'm like, well, what does the film say about Cam? I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. I think I would get views and it'd be fun to make. But here's the biggest problem with Cam Newton. I think Cam, his problem is he wants to be the man. He wants an NFL team to commit to him and say, you're our day one starting quarterback. We're paying you to be that. And he's too old. It's not going to happen. No NFL team is going to say, we're committed, you're our starting quarterback. Like, his best bet is to go to a good team, learn the system, and hope that the starting quarterback gets hurt. Think about Cam on a roster like New Orleans, where Jameis doesn't play well or he gets hurt. Cam can step up. He's had time to learn the playbook. He's ready, and he would dominate. I bet he'd do well. I think any quarterback who plays with New Orleans roster this year has a good shot to do well. Or Dallas. If Dak Prescott got hurt, he'd have a lot of fun playing in Dallas. Or Miami's interesting. If Tua was not playing well or got hurt, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, that running game, a good defense with Cam Newton. That's interesting. I would pay to see that. But Cam doesn't want to be patient is the problem, honestly. And I don't think he wants to do all that work of being a backup, being Josh Johnson or Tyrod Taylor. Like, I think Daniel Jones is going to start for a while in New York. When he inevitably plays bad or gets hurt, Tyrod Taylor is going to become the starting quarterback in New York. He put his ego aside and said, I'll wait till I get my opportunity. I'll be ready. I don't know that Cam wants that. That's okay, by the way. But he sounds like a rich and retired guy. And unless I'm starting, it's not worth my time. It's what I hear when he talks. And it's clearly not all just about playing football. Why not go to Canada? Why not join the XFL? Cam in the XFL would be incredible. He'd be the biggest star they've ever had. You could probably pay him more than other quarterbacks because he'd be a big draw. I would love to watch Cam Newton play in the XFL next spring. But I don't think he wants to be a backup. I don't think he wants to do anything other than be an NFL starting quarterback. And that's a red flag right there. Like, oh, you like it, but you don't love it enough to want to earn it. Is kind of how it comes across. And one thing I love about Cam, probably my favorite thing about Cam Newton by far, is that he refuses to conform. He's unique. He's totally himself. I respect the hell out of that. And unfortunately, that's not good for a corporate setting. Look at me, right? I have long hair. In real life, I cuss too much. I dress too casual. The same way I'm not good for a corporate setting because I'm individualistic and I don't really care about following the rules, I think Cam is the same way. And because he's not elite anymore, people don't want to put up with his personality, which makes sense. I don't know I think that sucks, but that's honest. Like that's true. So ENK wrote in, your question, ENK, was, is Cam living in denial? No, he's not. Look, to be the Cam Newton, Superman, to be who he is, you have to have supreme self-confidence. Cam still believes in himself, and I don't blame him for that at all. I can't hate on a guy for believing in himself and wishing things had gone differently. Isn't that all of us? Now, Cam also said a couple other things I like, things that I think are worth highlighting. The second half of the interview, he talked about the importance of having people around him that challenge him and tell him no. He said a lot of young guys have yes men, and they never have people that are like, hey, maybe don't drive home tonight. Maybe don't do this. Maybe don't do that. I think that's a great lesson for any young athlete, especially a young athlete with money. The people you surround yourself with really matter. And Cam said even in high school, he had people that helped him focus and wouldn't let him slip up. And it almost sounded like a Good Will Hunting type thing where they're like, Cam, you're the best of us. Like, you got a future that we don't. You can't do the stuff we're doing. That's pretty dang cool. I love to hear that. And if Cam can keep sharing that message, like put yourself around the right people and doing the stuff, he's influenced a lot of young quarterbacks. He listed off a whole list of guys that he has trained and worked with when they were growing up in Atlanta, in Georgia. I don't know, man. Cam said he's excited for the next part of his life. I'm excited too. He said everything I've done at a high level. And I just want to say good for Cam. I'm rooting for him in life. I don't think he's in denial. I think he just I think he's confident in himself. And I think what he doesn't realize is that he doesn't want to do the work. And maybe he does know this, but it came across like a guy who isn't quite aware of what he really wants, which he wants an NFL team to say, you're our starting quarterback week 1. Otherwise, it's not worth his time. He's made his money and he's good. And that's the thing that people were hearing. I don't think they heard a guy in denial. I think they heard a guy who is like, look, if it's not that specific role, I'm out. And I don't know. I like Cam a lot. Shout out to Pivot. It was a great listen. Great podcast. Ryan Clark is the man. I love him. I love his co-host too. I think he's actually just one of 3. I don't think he's like the standalone. But to me, Ryan Clark is the guy I really love listening to. I haven't watched him a lot. I don't effing watch ESPN. But the times I've seen him, I'm like, this guy's really sharp and really good. And I'll tell you what, I watched a lot of that Mike Tomlin interview. I got sucked in. He's awesome. He asks great questions. Ryan Clark is the man. And it's a great dynamic. So good for him. Good for Cam. And ENK, I hope I answered your question.